More than 2,000 years ago, priests in ancient Egypt carved a mysterious statement into the stone walls of a temple near Thebes. The inscription claimed that a single divine law governed the unfolding of events in a human life. Those who mastered it seemed to attract fortune, influence, and opportunity with surprising ease. Those who ignored it struggled endlessly against invisible resistance. Centuries later, the same idea appeared again in Taoist manuscripts in China, and again in the teachings of early Greek philosophers. 3 civilizations, 1 principle, different languages, same truth. It wasn't described as magic or superstition. Instead, these teachers spoke of a subtle law linking the inner world of the mind with the outer world of circumstances. And they warned, most people live their entire lives without ever realizing it exists. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover this mysterious law, why ancient sages guarded it carefully, and how mastering a few simple internal practices could make life begin to align in ways most people call coincidence. Chapter 1. The Ancient Discovery. Imagine a young scholar walking through the marble courtyards of ancient Athens, listening as philosophers debated the nature of fortune. Some argued that life was ruled by chance. Others insisted that the gods determined every outcome. But a quieter group of thinkers began noticing something unusual. They observed that certain individuals consistently experienced favorable outcomes, not constantly, but often enough to suggest a pattern. These individuals were not necessarily the strongest or the wealthiest, yet opportunities seemed to appear in their path more frequently than for others. The philosophers began studying these people carefully. They noticed how these individuals spoke about the future, how they reacted to challenges, and even how they directed their attention in daily life. Slowly, a surprising pattern emerged. Those who expected possibilities noticed possibilities. Those who expected obstacles noticed obstacles. It was not simply optimism. These individuals aligned 3 powerful forces: clear intention, emotional conviction, and decisive action. When these elements moved together, outcomes changed dramatically. One philosopher described it with a vivid analogy. The mind is like a lantern carried through a dark forest. Wherever its light falls, the path becomes visible. Think about that for a moment. In a dark forest, dozens of paths may exist, but you only walk the one illuminated by your lantern. The same principle applies in life. Attention determines what becomes visible, emotion fuels movement toward it, and action converts possibility into reality. The actionable lesson from these early observations is remarkably practical. Begin noticing where your attention rests throughout the day. Are you focusing on obstacles or opportunities? On fear or possibility? 2 different attentions, 2 different worlds. Start directing your focus deliberately toward solutions, growth, and meaningful goals. Over time, the mind begins illuminating paths that previously remained hidden. That's where the divine law begins to operate. Chapter 2. The Temple's Secret. Far from the philosophical debates of Greece, another group of seekers had been exploring the same mystery for centuries within the quiet temples of ancient Egypt. These priests were not merely religious figures. They were astronomers, mathematicians, and observers of human behavior. Within certain temples, initiates were taught a principle summarized in a short phrase carved into stone walls. As within, so without. To the untrained eye, the phrase seemed poetic, but the priests explained it with surprising clarity. They taught that the inner state of a person, thoughts, emotions, expectations, subtly influenced how they interpreted the world and how they acted within it. And those actions gradually shaped external circumstances. One preserved story tells of a young apprentice who struggled with constant failure. Every task he attempted seemed to collapse. Frustrated, he asked a senior priest why the gods opposed him. The priest handed him a small oil lamp and led him into a vast dark hall inside the temple. "Walk forward," the priest said. The apprentice hesitated. The room was enormous, and the lamp illuminated only a few steps ahead. "Trust the light," the priest instructed. Step by step, the young man moved forward. With each step, more of the path appeared. Eventually, he reached the far side of the hall safely. The priest then spoke quietly. "Life works the same way. The light of your inner state reveals the path before you, but you must move with it." Me. The lesson stunned the apprentice. His constant expectation of failure had caused hesitation, doubt, and scattered effort. When he shifted his inner focus toward possibility and committed action, his results began to change. Inner alignment first, outer results later. The practical takeaway from this ancient teaching is both simple and powerful. Begin aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions toward the same direction. If you desire growth, let your attention seek opportunity. Let your emotions support determination, and let your actions move decisively forward. Three forces aligned, one powerful result. That is the beginning of the divine law in motion. Chapter 3. The Law of Inner Alignment. Why do some intentions seem powerful while others fade into nothing? Ancient teachers believed the answer lies in a quiet but decisive principle. Intention alone is never enough. A Taoist manuscript written more than 2,000 years ago describes a traveler attempting to move a heavy cart stuck in mud. The traveler pulls with all his strength, yet the wheels refuse to move. Nearby, an old sage observes calmly before offering a simple explanation. "You pull with effort," the sage says, "but your mind expects failure." The ancient teachers noticed that when thought and emotion move in opposite directions, they cancel each other out. A person may declare a bold intention, success, prosperity, meaningful change, but if doubt quietly dominates the emotional current beneath those words, the inner signal becomes weak and scattered. Imagine trying to row a boat with one oar pulling forward and the other pulling backward. Motion becomes slow, awkward, and exhausting. The destination remains distant, not because the traveler lacks effort, but because the forces guiding movement are misaligned. Ancient philosophers across cultures describe the same pattern in different language. In India, yogic texts spoke of unity between mind and heart. Chinese Taoists described the harmony of internal energy and intention. Greek Stoics wrote about aligning belief with disciplined action. Different cultures. Same law. When intention and emotion move together, something powerful happens. Decisions become clearer. Attention sharpens. Opportunities that once appeared invisible begin to stand out. The person begins acting with confidence rather than hesitation. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is practical psychology, recognized thousands of years before modern science gave it a name. When belief and emotion reinforce each other, behavior becomes focused and persistent. And focused behavior produces results that scattered effort never could. One ancient teacher, summarize the idea with remarkable simplicity. A divided mind walks in circles. So how does someone apply this principle in daily life? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to the emotional tone that accompanies your intentions. Do you feel confidence, curiosity, and determination? Or do doubt and anxiety dominate the background? If conflict appears, pause before rushing forward. Strengthen the emotional foundation first. Reflect on past successes. Visualize desired outcomes. And remind yourself why the goal matters deeply. Two forces aligned. Forward momentum. Once intention and emotion support the same direction, action becomes powerful rather than scattered. The divine law begins responding when the inner signal becomes clear. Chapter 4. The Story of the Wandering Merchant. Several centuries ago, traders crossing the Silk Road shared a story about a merchant whose life seemed guided by extraordinary fortune. Wherever he traveled, profitable opportunities appeared. Markets flourished when he arrived. Partnerships formed easily. His success puzzled many observers. Some assumed he possessed secret information. Others believed he was simply lucky. But one fellow traveler noticed something far more revealing. The merchant paid careful attention to subtle signals that most people ignored. In bustling marketplaces, he watched how customers moved between stalls. During negotiations, he observed tone, posture, and hesitation. While others rushed to close deals quickly, he remained patient and curious. Over time, the traveler realized something profound. The merchant's success came not from supernatural luck, but from extraordinary awareness. His attention illuminated patterns hidden within ordinary situations. One evening, beside a desert fire, the traveler finally asked the merchant about his secret. The merchant smiled and replied with a simple story. "As a young man," he explained, "I chased profit everywhere and found very little. Then, an old scholar told me something strange. He said the world constantly whispers opportunities, but most people are too distracted to hear them." From that day forward, the merchant trained himself to observe rather than rush. He listened more than he spoke. He watched patterns others overlooked. Gradually, the opportunities that once seemed rare began appearing everywhere. The lesson from this story reveals another dimension of the divine law. Attention shapes perception. Perception shapes decision. Decision shapes outcome. 3 steps. Clear chain. When the mind is distracted or impatient, subtle signals disappear beneath the noise of daily activity. But when attention becomes disciplined and calm, patterns emerge naturally. A shift in customer behavior, a new trend in conversation, a small gap in the market, each becomes visible to the attentive observer. Ancient teachers often compared this skill to learning the rhythms of nature. A skilled farmer notices tiny changes in weather and soil long before a storm arrives. A skilled sailor reads the movement of waves before wind patterns shift. In the same way, a skilled thinker notices patterns within life itself. The practical takeaway is straightforward yet powerful. Slow down your observation of the world around you. Notice patterns in conversations, opportunities in challenges, and signals hidden within everyday situations. Awareness multiplies advantage. By sharpening attention and aligning intention with emotion, you create the internal conditions that ancient teachers believed activate the divine law. And when those conditions exist, opportunities often appear where others see only ordinary circumstances. Chapter 5. Attention, the hidden lever. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to see opportunities where others see only chaos? Ancient sages believed this was no accident. They recognized attention as a subtle but powerful lever, capable of shaping not just perception, but the very flow of events around a person. In the ancient libraries of Alexandria, scholars recorded patterns among merchants, philosophers, and explorers. Those who consistently directed their attention toward meaningful possibilities, rather than distractions or fears, experienced outcomes that seemed extraordinary to onlookers. Their minds functioned like finely tuned instruments, capable of picking up signals that most people missed entirely. Consider a story preserved in Egyptian scrolls. A young apprentice tasked with navigating a complex river route. He struggled repeatedly, missing crucial landmarks and drifting off course. A seasoned priest noticed the struggle and gave simple guidance. Observe the currents, study the horizon, and follow what catches your eye deliberately. The river responds to a focused navigator. By training his attention, the apprentice began noticing subtle signs, reflections of the sun on shallow waters, distant birds guiding him towards safe channels, ripples indicating hidden rocks. Step by step, his path became clear. Ancient wisdom repeatedly emphasizes the same point. Attention is not passive. It is an active force, a kind of energy that selects what will enter awareness and what will remain invisible. Practical application is simple but profound. Begin noticing where your mind habitually rests during the day. Is it focused on problems, worries, or irrelevant noise? Or is it directed toward insight, growth, and opportunity? Shift your attention intentionally. Observe, record, and follow the signals that matter. Over time, patterns emerge, and life begins to respond differently. Two truths intersect. Focus amplifies perception, and perception guides action. Small shifts in attention can cascade into remarkable outcomes. Chapter 6: Emotional Energy as a Catalyst. If attention illuminates the path, emotion fuels the journey. Ancient sages noticed a fascinating law. The same intention will produce vastly different results depending on the emotional energy attached to it. In the writings of the Taoist masters, a principle is stated plainly. A calm mind sees clearly. A charged heart moves mountains. This was not metaphorical hyperbole. Warriors, scholars, and explorers across cultures observed that action without emotional conviction often faltered. Yet even modest efforts infused with focused emotional energy produced results that seemed disproportionate to the apparent effort. A story from the trading routes of Persia illustrates this well. Two merchants competed for the same opportunity, a rare shipment of silk arriving at the market. The first acted cautiously, calculating risks and trying to remain emotionally neutral. The second prepared meticulously, yes, but approached the negotiation with excitement, curiosity, and a quiet but burning determination. The first merchant's proposal fell flat. The second won the contract. The difference was not luck or intelligence. It was emotional alignment. Passion, focus, and internal energy reinforced attention and intention, creating a resonance that influenced the outcome. Ancient alchemical texts describe this resonance as a kind of invisible magnet. Thought alone points the way. Emotion pulls the result toward you. Together, they produce a force strong enough to bend circumstance. Practical steps are straightforward. When planning action, pair it with genuine feeling. Excitement for growth, gratitude for opportunity, or determination to overcome challenges. These emotions fuel intention. They transform scattered effort into coherent energy that the universe seems to respond to. A subtle but powerful insight. Most people act with weak or contradictory emotion. They intend success but feel fear. They hope for connection but feel doubt. Ancient teachers warned this misalignment blunts results. Start aligning internal energy with your goals. Feel the vision you are pursuing as if it is already real. Let your emotional energy reinforce attention and intention. The combined effect is clear. Focus illuminates. Emotion energizes. Action converts. When all three move together, the law that ancient sages called divine begins to operate in your favor. Chapter 7. The Discipline of Quiet Reflection. In the temples of ancient India, monks spent hours each day in silent contemplation, seated before flickering oil lamps. The purpose was not merely spiritual, it was practical. They were training the mind to observe patterns, notice subtle signals, and align intention with action before stepping into the world. Reflection was never passive. Monks recorded thoughts, tracked decisions, and observed the emotional energy underlying their intentions. They discovered a profound law. Clarity emerges from stillness. Without reflection, the mind remains scattered, attention divided, and opportunities invisible. One story tells of a young novice tasked with organizing supplies for a festival. Distracted and impatient, he struggled. The elder instructed him to sit quietly, observe the patterns in how goods were stored and distributed, and reflect on the underlying principles. The novice did so and discovered efficiencies no one had noticed. The festival proceeded smoothly. The lesson is clear. The mind cannot discern patterns when it is overloaded with noise. Quiet reflection allows insight to surface naturally. Practical application is simple. Carve even 5 minutes daily to pause, reflect, and ask, what patterns exist in my life, my work, my relationships? What signals am I missing? Consistency is critical. Ancient teachers emphasized daily practice, not occasional meditation, but repeated discipline. Even small periods of reflection compound over weeks and months, sharpening awareness and aligning intention, attention, and emotional energy. When reflection becomes habitual, the mind acts as both observer and guide, revealing opportunities that previously went unnoticed. Chapter 8. The Power of Mental Rehearsal. Long before modern psychology confirmed the value of visualization, ancient warriors and scholars practiced what they called mental rehearsal. A Roman centurion would imagine the battle, the movement of troops, and his own responses before a single sword was drawn. Chinese strategists mentally traced the flow of rivers and armies to anticipate challenges before action. Why does this matter? The mind cannot fully distinguish between vividly imagined experience and reality when rehearsed with emotional energy. By mentally practicing desired outcomes, ancient teachers discovered that individuals not only prepared physically, but also aligned thought, emotion, and intention for action. A story from medieval Europe illustrates this. A knight preparing for a tournament visualized each step of the combat in intricate detail. Every turn of the horse, every swing of the sword, every dodge and strike, he practiced them mentally for weeks. When the day arrived, His movements flowed naturally, as if guided by instinct, and victory followed. Modern neuroscience confirms what these sages already understood. Rehearsal strengthens neural pathways, aligns focus, and primes the body to act decisively. Ancient teachers simply called it preparing the mind as a battlefield. Practical takeaway: before any significant action, presentation, negotiation, or personal challenge, pause to rehearse mentally. Visualize the steps clearly. Feel the emotions associated with success. Imagine obstacles and how you will overcome them. The combination of reflection and mental rehearsal is a potent multiplier. Reflection clarifies the path. Rehearsal prepares the body and mind. Together, they amplify the effects of intention, attention, and emotional energy. Those who master these internal practices discover that the external world responds with remarkable consistency. Opportunities become visible, decisions become sharper, outcomes improve. The sage's secret is now in your hands. Consistent reflection, paired with vivid mental rehearsal, lays the groundwork for the divine law to operate in your life. Chapter 9. The Courage Principle. Why do some people seem to achieve results others only dream of? Ancient teachers observed a striking pattern. The universe favors decisive action. It does not reward endless planning, hesitation, or cautious waiting for the perfect moment. Instead, it responds to those who act with courage, aligned with attention and intention. A story preserved in Roman archives illustrates this. A young general faced an enemy twice his number. Strategists debated endlessly, mapping every scenario. Most advised delay. Yet one commander, guided by clear intention, emotional conviction, and courage, acted swiftly. He exploited a subtle weakness in the enemy's formation that others failed to notice. Victory followed, and historians still marvel at how quickly a bold move changed the course of the campaign. The principle is simple but profound. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of it. The ancients emphasized that fear blocks attention, scatters intention, and dilutes emotional energy. When courage steps in, these forces align, creating momentum that the universe seems to mirror. Practical takeaway: identify one area in your life where hesitation has kept you stagnant. Align your intention and emotion, then take a step forward, however small, toward that goal. Movement generates clarity, opens opportunity, and attracts favorable conditions. Two truths intersect. Preparation amplifies courage, and courage activates opportunity. The lesson resonates across centuries. From Egyptian priests guiding novices through dark halls, to medieval knights facing unknown challenges, to modern entrepreneurs seizing bold opportunities, the consistent factor is courage aligned with internal mastery. Chapter 10. The Law of Subtle Influence. Imagine a quiet stream that slowly carves a canyon over centuries. The effect is gradual, almost imperceptible, yet unstoppable. Ancient sages described life in similar terms. Small, consistent shifts create disproportionate influence over time. A story from medieval Persia illustrates this principle. A farmer noticed subtle changes in soil and weather patterns and adjusted his planting strategy gradually. Other farmers rushed to respond to visible events, floods, market shifts, or pests, reacting only when consequences were unavoidable. Yet the patient farmer consistently aligned his actions with subtle indicators. Over years, his harvests surpassed all others. The law of subtle influence works invisibly. Small, deliberate actions, repeated with focus and emotional energy, reshape circumstances over time. Ancient texts describe this as moving in harmony with the currents of life, rather than forcing outcomes. When practiced consistently, it creates a compounding effect. Patterns emerge, opportunities accumulate, and favorable conditions appear where others see only chaos. Consider the example of a scholar studying hidden patterns in markets or nature. He doesn't act on every impulse. He observes, refines, and then moves when alignment is detected. Over time, the smallest adjustments yield disproportionately large results. Practical application. Begin with micro-actions that reinforce your goals. Observe patterns. Respond thoughtfully. Adjust. Repeat. Over weeks and months, the external world begins reflecting the internal alignment you have cultivated. The ancients repeatedly emphasized that impatience undermines subtle influence. Too often, people expect immediate results and abandon slow, steady alignment. Mastery comes from patience, attention, and consistent application. Two insights. Small actions compound, and patience preserves alignment. When you combine subtle influence with courage, reflection, mental rehearsal, and emotional energy, the internal mechanisms that ancient sages identified begin producing tangible outcomes. The world starts to bend, not by force, but by disciplined alignment. By understanding and applying the law of subtle influence, you position yourself to notice signals, act decisively, and allow life to respond to internal mastery. Ancient wisdom calls it the quiet art of shaping destiny. Chapter 11. The Hidden Pattern in Luck. Have you ever wondered why some people seem inexplicably lucky, while others struggle endlessly? Ancient philosophers and mystics observed that what most call luck is rarely random. Instead, it often follows subtle, predictable patterns visible only to those who cultivate attention, emotional energy, and consistent action. A story from ancient China illustrates this principle. A merchant repeatedly found profitable opportunities in markets where others failed. Curious colleagues asked whether he possessed secret knowledge or the favor of fortune. The merchant explained quietly, "I watch patterns others ignore. Timing, behavior, energy, these are the signals that guide opportunity. Luck is not magic, it is observation applied consistently." The lesson is profound. Luck is not a blind force. It is the visible outcome of internal alignment and external attentiveness. By aligning thought, emotion, and action, a person begins noticing micro-signals, the slight hesitation of a seller, the subtle demand in a marketplace, the small opening in a seemingly impossible situation. Ancient teachers emphasized one crucial caveat: impatience blinds you. Those who rush, ignore subtle signals, or dismiss repeated small patterns as irrelevant often miss opportunities entirely. In contrast, the patient observer, consistently aligned and attentive, allows the universe's patterns to reveal themselves gradually. Practical takeaway: start noticing recurring patterns in your life. When small coincidences appear repeatedly, pay attention. Align your action to these signals. Over time, luck will begin favoring you. Two truths intersect. Awareness attracts opportunity, and patience amplifies it. By internalizing this principle, you begin to recognize that what others label chance is, in fact, an emergent property of attention, intention, and emotional energy in harmony. Chapter 12. The Ancient Farmer's Lesson. In a small village along the Nile, an ancient farmer taught a lesson that generations would remember. He observed the land for signs, soil quality, rainfall patterns, wind directions, and even the behavior of animals. While other villagers rushed to sow or harvest based on convenience or tradition, he acted in accordance with subtle indicators. One season, a sudden storm devastated many fields, but the farmer's crops survived. Others marveled at his miraculous success. Yet the secret was simple. Careful observation and alignment with natural patterns allowed him to act in harmony with forces most others ignored. Ancient wisdom calls this timing and attunement. The principle applies far beyond agriculture. Life, like the land, has cycles and subtle currents. Those attuned to them notice openings, avoid pitfalls, and act decisively when conditions are favorable. The universe responds, often in ways that appear miraculous to the unobservant. Practical steps are clear. Cultivate patience, observe patterns daily, and refrain from forcing outcomes prematurely. Align action with discerned signals rather than external pressures. This principle transforms random events into navigable paths. One anecdote from Greek philosophy reinforces this lesson. A student asked his teacher why some people always seemed to encounter fortune while others struggled. The teacher replied, "They are not lucky. They have learned to move with the currents that others resist." By internalizing this lesson, the divine law becomes apparent. Careful observation, patience, and alignment magnify the effect of attention, intention, and emotional energy. The subtle forces of life bend in favor of those who harmonize with patterns rather than resist them. Takeaway: cultivate awareness, respect timing, and act when conditions align. Small, consistent choices accumulate into extraordinary outcomes. The ancient farmer's wisdom is still relevant today. Markets, relationships, and personal growth all follow underlying patterns. Those who watch, align, and act patiently gain advantages invisible to those who rush blindly. Chapter 13. The Mirror Principle. Have you ever noticed how the world often seems to reflect your inner state? Ancient mystics across Egypt, India, and Greece observed the same phenomenon, describing it as the mirror principle. Your outer circumstances often mirror the beliefs, emotions, and expectations within you. A story from a Greek philosopher illustrates this beautifully. A young student complained that his peers treated him unfairly and opportunities never appeared. The teacher took him to a calm pool of water and instructed him to gaze at the reflection. "Observe carefully," the teacher said. "What you see here is not the water, but the mind within you. Change the mind, and the reflection changes." Over the following weeks, the student practiced cultivating positive intention, balancing fear with confidence, and observing his emotions without judgment. Gradually, his interactions shifted. Peers responded differently. Opportunities that once seemed blocked began appearing naturally. The lesson is clear. External results are inseparable from internal alignment. The way you feel, the thoughts you nurture, and the expectations you carry create a subtle feedback loop. Like ripples in a pond, your inner state extends outward, influencing circumstances and perception. Practical application is immediate. Begin noticing recurring reflections in your life. Tension met with tension, negativity met with negativity, and kindness returned with kindness. Adjust your internal state deliberately. Align your beliefs, intentions, and emotional energy, and observe how the world subtly changes in response. Ancient teachers cautioned that this principle is not about denial or wishful thinking. It is about disciplined alignment. Fearful expectations attract obstacles. Calm, focused, emotionally aligned intention attracts opportunity. Two truths intersect. Internal state shapes perception, and perception guides results. Chapter 14. The Energy of Gratitude. If reflection aligns the mind, gratitude energizes it. Ancient sages from China, Egypt, and India all emphasized gratitude as a central practice, not simply politeness, but a powerful energetic tool. They believed that genuine appreciation resonates through mind, body, and environment, amplifying the effects of attention, intention, and action. Consider a story from an Indian monk. Each day, he began his tasks by silently acknowledging the tools, colleagues, and conditions that made his work possible. Over time, he noticed that challenges seemed smaller, solutions appeared faster, and cooperation increased among those around him. The effect was not imagined. Observers remarked on his effortless success. Why does gratitude work this way? Modern research now confirms what the ancients observed. Expressing appreciation activates neural pathways associated with positive expectation and reinforced attention. It reduces internal resistance, harmonizes emotional energy, and enhances focus. In short, gratitude tunes the mind to notice opportunity and act decisively. A practical step is simple yet profound. Begin each day listing 3 specific things for which you are genuinely grateful. Do so with feeling, not habit. Notice how your perception, decision-making, and interactions subtly shift. Over weeks, this practice reshapes your internal energy and, as the mirror principle suggests, your external results. Ancient stories repeatedly emphasized that the effect multiplies when gratitude is combined with attention and emotional alignment. The thoughtful farmer noticing the soil, the attentive merchant observing patterns, the courageous general acting decisively, all incorporated appreciation, consciously or unconsciously, into their daily lives. The takeaway is unmistakable. Cultivate an attitude of gratitude daily. Let it enhance attention, support emotional energy, and reinforce aligned action. Even small shifts in appreciation can amplify outcomes disproportionately. When reflection and gratitude combine, they create a stable foundation for the divine law. Internal states become coherent, perception sharpens, and the world begins to respond favorably. Opportunities emerge naturally. Decisions gain clarity. The path forward becomes increasingly illuminated. Chapter 15. The Observer Effect of Life. Have you noticed how paying attention seems to shape the world around you? Ancient sages describe this as a subtle principle. The act of observation itself influences outcomes. They understood that where attention rests, energy flows, and the environment begins responding in kind. A story from a Taoist scroll illustrates this clearly. A student sought mastery over his craft, but was frustrated by repeated setbacks. The teacher instructed him to spend a week observing everything: the movement of air, the rhythm of work, the patterns of human behavior. At first, the student felt this was pointless. Nothing changed. By the end of the week, he noticed patterns he had previously overlooked: small behaviors, timing cues, and environmental signals became visible. Using this insight, he acted in harmony with circumstances rather than against them, achieving results that previously seemed impossible. The principle is deceptively simple. Attention does not just perceive, it shapes reality. What you focus on becomes amplified, while what you ignore remains inert. Ancient alchemists called this directing the inner flame to light the outer world. Practical application. For one day, notice where your attention naturally goes. What problems, distractions, or negative patterns dominate. Then deliberately shift attention toward opportunities, solutions, and desired outcomes. Observe how your experience subtly changes. The ancients emphasized that repeated practice strengthens this effect. Observation must be intentional, sustained, and combined with aligned emotion and action. Over time, the observer begins influencing circumstances without force, simply by directing internal energy. Two truths intersect. Where attention goes, energy flows. Where energy flows, life responds. By mastering the observer effect, you gain an invisible advantage. You begin noticing opportunities, mitigating risks, and aligning action in ways that appear lucky or miraculous to others. The divine law quietly begins operating through disciplined attention. Chapter 16. The Silent Advantage. If observation shapes outcomes, restraint multiplies influence. Ancient teachers across cultures recognize that silence and self-control provide a disproportionate advantage in life. Speaking, acting, or reacting impulsively dissipates internal energy. Quiet mastery preserves it. A story from medieval Japan illustrates this principle. A young samurai trained alongside a vocal, impulsive peer. Both were equally skilled, yet in tournaments and strategy exercises, the quieter student consistently outperformed the boisterous one. Observers were puzzled until a master explained, "Silence is not weakness. It is energy preserved. The mind that holds still sees clearly, strikes accurately, and influences outcomes invisibly." The principle applies beyond martial arts. In business, relationships, and decision-making, those who act deliberately and conserve energy gain influence far greater than effort alone would suggest. Impulsive talk, reactive emotions, and scattered attention dilute internal power. Silence, patience, and measured action concentrate it. Practical application. Notice moments when you feel compelled to react immediately, whether in conversation, negotiation, or daily choices. Pause, reflect. Choose action intentionally rather than reflexively. Small adjustments cultivate the silent advantage over time. Historical anecdotes reinforce this lesson. The silent merchant who listened carefully negotiated better deals. The reflective philosopher influenced disciples with minimal words. Even the courageous general relied on careful restraint and strategic silence to achieve victories. Two truths intersect. Restraint preserves energy, and energy magnifies influence. The cumulative effect is profound. Combining attention, emotional alignment, reflection, and now disciplined restraint creates an internal field that subtly reshapes circumstances. Life begins to respond favorably, often in ways imperceptible to those who act impulsively. The silent advantage is not passive. It is deliberate, patient, and aligned action that magnifies the effects of all other principles. The ancients called it the hidden leverage of mastery. Chapter 17, The Final Key. All the principles we've explored, the alignment of thought, emotion, and attention, the courage to act, patience with subtle influence, reflection, gratitude, and restraint, lead to one final, decisive insight. Mastery of self precedes mastery of circumstances. Ancient sages repeatedly warned that seeking control over the world without internal alignment is futile. A story from a Sufi text illustrates this. A young seeker attempted to command outcomes, impress rulers, and acquire wealth through external effort alone. Nothing succeeded. Frustrated, he returned to his teacher, who guided him to focus inward, observing and harmonizing his thoughts, emotions, and actions. Over months, the seeker cultivated clarity, patience, attention, and emotional resonance. Slowly, the world began to shift in response. Opportunities appeared naturally. Allies emerged unexpectedly. Challenges resolved with ease. By first mastering his internal state, he unlocked influence far greater than brute effort could ever achieve. The ancients described this as a universal law. The internal creates the external. External circumstances reflect the degree of internal alignment. Misaligned thought scatters attention. Misaligned emotion weakens intention. Impulsive action dissipates energy. When these are unified, the effect is exponential. Practical application. Begin by auditing your internal state. Where are thoughts scattered? Where do emotions contradict intentions? Which actions lack focus or purpose? Begin realignment deliberately through reflection, mental rehearsal, gratitude, patience, and strategic restraint. The final key is deceptively simple. Align yourself first, act decisively second. The universe responds to coherence, not chaos. Those who grasp this secret harness the cumulative power of all preceding principles, the divine law in motion. By internalizing this principle, you gain a roadmap to consistently shape your environment, influence outcomes, and activate opportunities. The final key is not about control, but alignment, quiet, steady, and inevitable. Chapter 18. The Emerging Future Trend. Even today, modern science and psychology are beginning to confirm what ancient sages observed thousands of years ago. Studies in neuroscience, quantum observation, and behavioral psychology demonstrate that attention, emotion, and intention profoundly influence perception, decision-making, and even probabilistic outcomes. Consider research on the observer effect in quantum physics. The act of observation can influence outcomes at a fundamental level. Cognitive neuroscience demonstrates that focused attention and emotional engagement increase neural plasticity, improving learning, memory, and behavioral outcomes. Behavioral economics shows that small, consistent habits and patterns of action shape long-term results in ways that mimic the ancients' insights about subtle influence. A story from modern entrepreneurship illustrates this beautifully. A young innovator began tracking attention, emotional alignment, and deliberate rehearsal of outcomes before pitching ideas or negotiating partnerships. Over time, opportunities accumulated far faster than for peers who relied solely on knowledge or skill. The external world appeared to bend in response to his internal mastery. Emerging trends suggest that integrating internal alignment into personal and professional life is no longer esoteric, it is measurable. Practices like mindfulness, deliberate visualization, gratitude journaling, and reflective observation are increasingly validated by science as catalysts for performance, influence, and success. Practical takeaway: blend ancient wisdom with modern methods. Use reflection, mental rehearsal, and alignment of intention and emotion daily. Observe patterns, act decisively, and cultivate patience and gratitude. The convergence of old and new reveals a predictable formula for influence and opportunity. By understanding and practicing these principles, you position yourself at the forefront of a growing understanding that internal mastery drives external results, that small, consistent actions amplify outcomes, and that the universe responds to coherence, attention, and emotional resonance. Two truths intersect. Science confirms what the ancients knew, and alignment remains the ultimate catalyst. The emerging trend is clear. As awareness of these principles spreads, those who apply them intentionally will gain a disproportionate advantage in life, influence, and opportunity. The divine law, once hidden in temples and secret scrolls, is now accessible, but only to those willing to align internally and act consciously.